URC fixtures are out. The new competition, the URC, which has got the Pro 14 teams minus the Cheetahs and the Kings, plus these 4 South African teams. Fixtures are out. We'll go over them. It's a little bit complicated. I've put it all on paper to kind of make it a bit clearer for myself, but we'll kind of break it down into the key points, and you guys can let me know your thoughts on the competition proper. If you didn't know, the competition is made up of kind of 4 groups. The Welsh teams, the Irish teams, right? They're all in their own groups, and you play the teams in your group more often. So if you're the Bulls, you play the Sharks, Stormers, and Lions twice, home and away, right? Whereas you play everybody else once, either home or away. That's the premise of the competition. 9 games at home, 9 games away. Top 8 teams, I think it is, make the playoffs. Bob's your uncle. Pretty straightforward stuff. Where it gets a little bit complicated is some of kind of the break weeks and the fact that the South African teams sometimes play when the European teams aren't, and then vice versa. The South African teams have got a long road trip early. And then the Rugby Championship, the other one, overlaps with this one a bit. Six Nations breaks up this competition a bit. But overall, it kind of makes sense. What I mean by the Rugby Championship of overlapping is the first couple of rounds of Springboks, All Blacks, Wallabies, Pumas. The Rugby Championship overlaps with this, the United Rugby Championship. So if you've got any Pumas or Springboks or Wallabies or All Blacks in your team, not likely for Wallabies or All Blacks, but the other two, you won't have them available for at least the first couple of rounds. Probably longer, but at least the first couple of rounds, you won't have those guys available. So that's a bit of a downer for the South African teams especially, and then they have to start the games on the road. All the South African teams start with 4 weeks on the road, so a month in Europe, whereas the European teams are all staying in Europe until at least end of November. That's when some of them start to head to South Africa. The South African teams get a bye in round 5 and round 8 and in round 9. And they essentially keep those in hand. So they will play those games later on, but they'll play them during the Six Nations. So when all the European teams are sitting down to watch the Six Nations, their club teams, Scarlets and Connacht and whatnot, are not playing. But the South African teams keep playing, so the competition rolls on. That's kind of another one of the key points. So the South Africans get a bunch of rest early and then a long stint of games towards the end, whereas the European teams have a longer stint at the start and then they have a break during the Six Nations. So it's a bit different from what we're used to seeing from the Pro 14 anyway. The South African teams do get to South Africa in round 6 and 7. That's when the first teams like Munster and Cardiff and Scarlets, Zebra have to make their way down to South Africa to play those games. As I mentioned, the South African teams go on bye weeks in late December, early January, and that's when all the rivalry fixtures happen with the European teams. So that's when you see the likes of, Leinster away at Munster. That's when you see Cardiff and Scarlets playing. Glasgow and Edinburgh, Zebra and Benetton are all going head-to-head while the South African teams are having a break. The South African teams do have to head back to Europe for one game, which is a bit of a bizarre one after their buys are done. And then at the end of the month, they go back to South Africa to a huge stint of games. How many games is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games in a row at home. Mostly against South African opposition. So there's this little cluster, rounds 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and the makeup round 5, 8, and 9, if that makes sense, for the South African teams are all just playing each other. So it's all rivalry rounds all the time. It's almost like a mini competition in itself. While at that time, the European teams are at some points taking a break for the Six Nations. And during the fallow weeks of the Six Nations, when they're having a break, this competition kind of kicks back into gear. So yeah, that one, I like the fact that the Six Nations is kind of the centerpiece in Europe and you're not having to play your B team. Maybe that means some of the European guys aren't going to get a chance. I'm assuming they'll want to rest the Six Nations guys, and it's always traditionally been a good chance to give some of your younger guys a run, right? But yeah, the competitions aren't going to collide, so I think it's a good thing. But I'm just used to that, not having to divide my attention between the Blues and the All Blacks kind of thing. The competition resumes after the Six Nations. I forgot to mention it does take breaks for the Champions Cup and Challenge Cup, so that's kind of to be expected. I mean, it didn't say that, but there's breaks in about the times when that competition would be going. And then the South African teams do have to finish the competition on the road. All the European teams are done with South Africa by round kind of 17. So, yeah, those were kind of my main takes away from it. South Africans are away from home for a long stint early, and then they've got a bunch of games at home, but also a bunch of time kind of sitting on their hands. The European teams have got a big stint of games early, a wee bit of a break during the Six Nations, and then the kind of trips to South Africa are scattered between different teams because they only have to go 2 at a time. The kind of main takes on each pool, the South Africans obviously have the most travel. That's to be expected from the Super Rugby days. They start in Europe, head back to South Africa, play a couple of games, back to Europe for 1 game, back to South Africa for that big stint that I mentioned, and then they finish in Europe for 1 game. So it's back and forth a few times. Whereas the European teams, they've got 2 games in South Africa, and then that's it. They're done. But it used to be the same for the New Zealand teams and the Aussie teams when they would travel to South Africa as well. So, yeah, away start, a lot more travel, and a long home stint, which is probably pretty welcome. Although South Africa's a big country, man. So, like, traveling from Cape Town to Joburg is, it's probably further than a lot of the European destinations. I don't know. The Welsh pools, it seems kind of the most balanced. Just at my kind of quick look of it. They don't have to do a lot of early travel. Look, not even within Europe. Like, Scarlets do have to go to Edinburgh in the first round, but like Ospreys are at Dragons, and Cardiff hosts Connacht. The second round, again, like it's 3 of them have got home games, and then the one Welsh team that's got an away game is away to one of the Welsh teams, so they're mostly Wales-based for at least like the first kind of 4 or 5 rounds. So even within Europe, they're not having to do a heck of a lot of travel. But I guess that bites a bit later on, and that you've got a few away games to make up. The Scottish and Italian pool, I mean, it looks the weakest on paper. But if you just look at the Pro 14 from last year, Benetton and Zebra finished bottom of the log. But then Benetton went and won the Rainbow Cup, so who knows? But on paper, it does look the weakest. Is it Edinburgh or is it Glasgow? Glasgow, I think, is the only team that's got Leinster and Munster at home. And Edinburgh is the only team that's got, like, of the non-Irish teams, that's got them both away. That's a bit of an unlucky one for Edinburgh to draw both finalists away from home. But, yeah, I'm not sure if there's a bit of an extra travel factor because Italy is slightly further away. Like, what is the flight from Scotland to Italy? Is it like a couple of hours compared to, what is it to Ireland? Like an hour? I don't know. You guys in that neck of the woods will have to let me know if that's much more travel to Italy, because they have to go home and away to each other. And then this pool looks the toughest because these 4 teams finished the top 4 in the competition last year. So that just seems like you have to play the toughest teams more often. So it seems, based on last year's results anyway, to be a pretty tough one. Like if you're Connacht, you've got to go play Leinster twice, Munster twice, and those are the 2 finalists from last year. So that seems like a bit of a short straw. And these guys seem to have back-to-back-to-back rivalry games more than anybody else. Like Munster have got Leinster at home, Connacht away, and then Ulster at home in rounds 8, 9, and 10. Leinster have got Munster away, Ulster away, and then the Lions. So not quite back-to-back, but then prior to the break, they'd had Ulster and Connacht at home. So it's like back-to-back-to-back Irish teams, Irish teams, Irish teams. Well, the other pools seem to be a bit more spread out. But, yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one. Like, the competition does have to shut down multiple times. It's disrupted by the Six Nations, but you could say that's good because it means you, as a fan, can kind of focus on your international team when it's international time and then focus on your club team when it's club time. The South African teams kind of plow on during the Six Nations, which is good if you're a South African fan who doesn't really care about the Six Nations. You can kind of just keep following your own team. But you will have kind of long stints where you don't, you don't get to see your team in action because they're just on. There's Champions Cup on, there's no games on, and then like there's 2 bye weeks late December, early January for the South African team. So there's like no games on from, what is it, like 4th of December is their last one, and the next one is January 7th. So it's like more than a month off with no games for those fans. So yeah, I reckon the Lions, Munster, Cardiff and Glasgow have got the best of each of the pools, but again, that's just kind of a cursory look. But anyway, yeah, like I said, it's a bit weird, but it does kind of make sense. The fixtures list, you guys will have to let me know what you reckon. Which pool do you think is the toughest? Do you think the South Africans are doing it tough with all the extra travel, or is that just kind of the way the competition has to work? Do you think it's a bit tough on the Irish teams having the toughest pool, or do you think the South African pool may be the toughest one? Am I kind of sleeping on maybe the Welsh teams? I know there's been a few signings, and as I mentioned, Benetton, the reigning champion of anything related to this competition with the Rainbow Cup. The Scottish teams as well, man. I don't know. I am going to make a concerted effort to try and follow this competition. It's got 144 games, so maybe not every game. Maybe not like I said, maybe not every game. But I've been blindsided a few times when I see like the recent Argentinian games against Wales. Like some of the Welsh guys, I was like, I do not know who these guys are, because they've been playing for teams like, Dragons, who I don't watch enough of. So yeah, I'd like to kind of watch some of the more of the domestic games. And then I got the South African team, so I'm used to watching, and I would miss if I didn't get to see these guys. So yeah, I will try my best to try and follow this competition as best I can. I think I've got my head around the structure of the competition, but yeah, we'll kind of see how things go. You guys let me know your thoughts. Do you think any teams have been particularly hard done by the fixtures list? I've seen there's been a few people saying that kind of with some like Saturday afternoon games, it's a bit inconvenient for them. For me, a lot of these games will be on early morning-ish, which is actually not too bad. But anyway, you guys take care. Let me know your thoughts on the fixtures list. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.